Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 33rd Annual Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Event, hosted by the YMCA of Greater Monmouth County. I'm Mike Wright, and I have the great privilege of serving on the YMCA Board of Directors and working with the outstanding Community Advisory Committee that planned today's commemoration. Thank you all for joining us virtually this morning to celebrate Dr. King's inspiring activism and vision for an equitable and just America, to honor a man of conscience and his message of freedom, equality, justice, and love. When we come together each year, we're holding each other accountable for his message and the call to take action where you can. Dr. King once said, "We are confronted with the fierce urgency of now. This is no time for apathy or complacency. This is a time for vigorous and positive action. It is time to get off the sidelines and make some good trouble. I know that getting out of your comfort zone can be hard, but sometimes taking that risk is not only needed, it can yield amazing results." As I said last year, we each have more power than we think, and we must continue to show up, step up, and speak up. Before the invocation for our gathering, I'd like to ask that you join me in thanking our good friends at Hackensack Meridian Health, New Jersey Natural Gas, and Porter Plus Realty for sponsoring the MLK Essay Contest and so generously providing a scholarship of $1,500 for each of our 2 winning students, who you will meet shortly. I would also like to give a special thanks to the members of the MLK Advisory Committee: Tom Hayes, New Jersey Natural Gas; Darrell Hughes, Hackensack Meridian Health; Samara O'Neill, Porter Plus Realty; Rabbi Mark Klein, Monmouth Reformed Temple; Gwendolyn Love, Lunch Break; Pastor Jessica Nolte, United Methodist Church of Red Bank; Gilda Rogers, T. Thomas Fortune Foundation; Reverend Ronald Sparks, Bethel AME Freehold; Sue Harbison, HabCorp; Lori Ferguson, Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield; and Itzel Hernandez, American Friends Services. Let's give them a big round of applause for today's celebration. It is now my pleasure to introduce Reverend Ronald Sparks from Bethel AME Church in Freehold to share this morning's invocation.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning. I wish you peace, shalom, assalamu alaikum to you all. Let us pray. To the God of peace, compassion, love, kindness, long-suffering, and forgiveness. To the one who is always faithful and tender-hearted towards your people, even when we are not to you nor each other. We come this morning to celebrate the life and legacy of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. We remember him for the work he did and how he longed to bring us together as a nation beyond the color of our skin, our faith tradition, our socioeconomic standing, or our political affiliation. We invite your presence to abide with us, to bring us together in a spirit of unity. Today, as we look at the state of our nation and the communities in which we live, we find ourselves divided more than ever. As we were and are inspired by the words and deeds of Dr. King, we ask you, O Lord, to help us to understand that if those words and actions are truly meaningful and life-changing, that we must be moved beyond our words and allow our actions to speak for us rather than social, political, and religious pundits. Lord, we're asking that you would allow us to become the change we desire to see. Help us not to be socially, politically, and theologically arrogant to think our ideas and ways are better than yours. You taught us in your word that if we do what is right, we act justly, and we love and walk faithfully and humbly with our God, that we will be fine. May we not allow this to be a mere repetitive habit that we exercise once a year, but allow the actions of Dr. King to become infectious so that we spread it every day of our lives through our own actions. Forgive us not for meeting your expectation towards each other or in our civil discourse and lack of respect for each other's humanity. May we fulfill the plan and purpose in our lives as you did with Dr. King. And with your help, may we live in peace and harmony with one another, not just today, but our entire lives. This we pray in the name that is above all names. Amen. And now we welcome our YMCA students who will recite our nation's pledge.
Okay, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wow, that was beautiful. Thank you to our child care participants. They are amazing. Good morning. I am Tom Hayes from New Jersey Natural Gas, and we have the honor of being one of the essay contest sponsors this year, along with Hackensack Meridian Health and Porter Plus Realty. As part of the Y's commitment to social justice and youth engagement, we invited all high school students from across Greater Monmouth County to participate in the contest. This year, we asked students to reflect on the following statement. Engaging across differences can be hard, so people often default to interacting with those who make them most comfortable. Describe a time when you took an opportunity to build a relationship with someone whose beliefs, background, culture, or experiences were very different from your own. I'm thrilled to let you know we received some great responses, and I think you'll agree that our future is in good hands once you hear from our two winning essayists. I am happy to turn things over now to Samara O'Neill to introduce our winners.
Thank you, Tom. All of us at Porter Plus Realty are honored and extremely proud to be a sponsor of this annual contest highlighting our youth voices. Please welcome our first essay winner, Safa Mbarki. Safa is a junior at Middletown High School North, where she's an active member in the Environmental Club, the Key Club, the Viewpoint Club, and other school activities. And now here's Safa to share her essay.
Hello, I'm Safa Mbarki. I am a student at Middletown High School North, and I am pleased to be recognized as one of this year's MLK essay winners. My essay is called A Chance. Growing up, I attended a small Islamic school, a little bubble of familiarity in my otherwise Muslim-free town. Every day, I would go to class with others who shared my core values and had similar cultures. Unified under one common Muslim identity, there was this unspoken understanding of one another. A silent acceptance so natural that to point it out would be considered odd. I became so used to this dynamic that I never imagined my life would be different enough to strip away my sense of comfort and belonging. However, this belief would prove to be misguided, as at the end of the 5th grade, my parents decided to have me start public middle school. I was excited. Of course, there was no way of anticipating the stress of being the only hijabi girl in a nearly all-white school. Hurrying down those crowded hallways, I felt like an ant under a magnifying glass, a vulnerable creature left alone to face the scrutiny of curious giants. Nevertheless, my struggles did not drive me away from making friends. One of the first people I befriended was this girl that I shared a few classes with. She was white, like everyone else at school, which intrigued me. At that point, I had simply been an observer, trying to understand my peers' unspoken social expectations and rituals from afar. Yet, no matter how hard I tried, most everything remained a mystery to me. The names that were exchanged like secret parcels in the hallways, and the bless yous and knock on woods were all just more pieces to the confusing puzzle of public school. So, when I had the opportunity to come close to one of these peculiar people and solve the mystery, I just couldn't say no. Every day, I would greet my friend simply, slowly easing my way into an actual conversation. She would respond casually, sharing with me little tidbits about her life, oblivious to the fact that she was informing me on aspects of American culture that were foreign to me. Even the small, seemingly irrelevant details came as total surprises to me, like how many families go out to dinner often. In contrast, my parents rarely ever went out to dinner. There was no particular reason, it just wasn't really a thing that we ever did. One of the most fascinating things I learned about was Lent, a period of time in which Christians make a commitment to give up something of value, with many fasting on such holy days. As a Muslim, fasting was near and dear to my heart, a symbol of my religious identity. Finding out that these seemingly alien people also fasted exposed a once hidden connection, radically changing my view of them. It occurred to me that maybe they weren't so confusing after all, that these people were just like me, normal. The only difference was in our values and traditions. aspects that, if given the chance, can be understood and accepted. All it took was just that, a chance.
Thank you, Safa. That was so inspiring. Your story reminds us how important it is to embrace the differences in others and be willing to take a chance. Our second essay winner is William Blake, a junior at Red Bank Regional High School. William is a member of the Spanish National Honor Society, Jazz Band, and the Engineering Academy. He also participates in track and field. And now I'm happy to introduce William.
Hi, my name is William Blake, and I attend Red Bank Regional High School. Thank you for selecting my essay on engaging across differences as a winner this year and the opportunity to share this with you today. The life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. continues to resonate through every aspect of today's world. His total commitment, courage, and determination to fight against oppression, ignorance, and violence in order to attain civil rights for all provides a blueprint for the rest of us to follow. Dr. King exemplified what it means to bridge the divide through his willingness to engage with, work through, and come up with solutions despite differences. Music is by far the activity I enjoy the most. I play the piano and saxophone. Given the demographics of the area I live in, often I find that I'm the only African American in many of the bands in which I'm asked to perform. I spend many hours per week rehearsing for multiple concerts and events, and as such, between sessions, there are a lot of conversations and interactions with students that are not of the same background and culture as myself. I must add that both my parents are from Jamaica, so while I am American by birth, my heritage and cultural norms are mostly Jamaican. This is important because it becomes very clear how different I am from others in such a setting. At one concert, I found myself having to explain the many nuances in my behavior, speech, general demeanor, and experiences to one of my curious bandmates. I welcomed the questions about my differences and took the time to answer each one. This provided the opportunity to educate and at the same time build a stronger relationship with a person whom there would be little or no interactions with otherwise. I even encouraged him to speak openly and ask questions, even difficult ones, because that is how we foster understanding between each other. At the end of the conversation, we both agreed that we had a lot more in common than we initially thought. The remarkable thing about playing music is that no matter how we are as individuals, once the band is assembled and the music starts playing, all differences get pushed to the side. Music bridges the divide, and we all become one with each other. In the end, Dr. King asks us to find the commonality with each other, and music definitely provides that for me.
That was so inspiring. A hearty congratulations to our essay contest winners. Thanks to you, our future looks bright. Hello everyone, I am Daryl Hughes with Hackensack Meridian Health. I'm the manager with the network's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department. I am here to keep the inspiration going. It is my distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, Andrea McChristian. Andrea is the Law and Policy Director at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. In this capacity, she leads the implementation of the strategic vision and the direction of the Law and Policy Program. Andrea oversees the programmatic function of the Institute's 3 pillars of social justice: democracy and justice, economic justice, and criminal justice reform. Prior to becoming Law and Policy Director, Andrea served as the Director of the Criminal Justice Reform Initiative and was the primary author of Bring Our Children Home, Ain't I a Child?, which forms the basis of the 150 Years is Enough campaign. Andrea's writing on juvenile justice and racial justice has been published in the Star Ledger, the Juvenile Justice Information Exchange, and New Jersey Spotlight. Before joining the Institute, Andrea served as a litigation associate at the New York office of Fried, Frank, Harris, Shriver, and Jacobson. Andrea is a 2008 graduate of Yale University, graduating with distinction in the major of political science. At Yale, Andrea served as co-president of the Yale NAACP, co-reactivating the chapter after a years-long absence from campus. After graduation, Andrea joined Teach for America, teaching Head Start for 2 years in the Las Vegas Valley. Andrea then attended Columbia Law, where she participated in challenging the consequences of mass incarceration clinic interned in Auckland, New Zealand as part of the law school's Human Rights Internship Program, and interned at the NAACP Legal and Education Fund. She graduated from Columbia Law School in 2013 as a Harlan Fiske Stone Scholar. Andrea, we are thrilled to have you with us this morning.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you, Daryl, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so honored to be with you all today as a keynote speaker for this powerful virtual commemoration honoring Dr. King's legacy. I'd like to thank the YMCA of Greater Monmouth County for the invitation to speak with you all today. I'd also like to thank Gilda Rogers for the honor of being able to record my remarks in the historic T. Thomas Fortune House here in Red Bank. As mentioned, my name is Andrea McChristian, and I serve as the Law and Policy Director at the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice. For those of you not familiar with the Institute, we are a legal policy and advocacy organization based in the mighty city of Newark, New Jersey, and we use cutting-edge racial and social justice advocacy to empower people of color by building reparative systems that create wealth, transform justice, and harness democratic power from the ground up in New Jersey. And at the Institute, we are no strangers to the essay topic that the MLK Essay Contest scholarship winners so expertly answered: how to build relationship across perceived divides. And I believe that this also speaks to a larger question I'd like to tackle in my remarks today. How do we address and sit in the uncomfortable when it is necessary for transformative social justice? And do you know who is no stranger to this very question? That's right, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Indeed, while many of us are familiar with the I Have a Dream speech, we may not be as familiar with Dr. King's other powerful remarks that call for the need to make ourselves uncomfortable, to recognize our privileges and power structures, to be active participants in dismantling systems of oppression to ensure equity. To illustrate this point, I want to use Dr. King's own words here in reflection on the role of rebellion in the civil rights movement. And I quote, "But it's not enough for me to stand before you tonight and condemn riots. It would be morally irresponsible for me to do that without at the same time condemning the contingent, intolerable conditions that exist in our society. These conditions are the things that cause individuals to feel that they have no other alternative than to engage in violent rebellions to get attention. And I must say tonight that a riot is the language of the unheard. And what is it America has failed to hear? It has failed to hear that the promises of freedom and justice have not been met. And it has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity." And I want to repeat that last sentence. And has failed to hear that large segments of white society are more concerned about tranquility and the status quo than about justice and humanity. And how does that sentence make you feel? Perhaps uncomfortable? To that I say good. We should all be uncomfortable because as we sit in this moment of racial reckoning as a nation, we're at a crossroads. If we go one way, we can continue with the status quo, sitting in what we know and understand, ultimately failing to address our society's myriad racial inequities. Or we can go the other way, that Dr. King urges us to travel and sit in this uncomfortable moment in time, using it to compel us to eliminate structural racism in our state and nation's very foundation. But how can we go about doing this? Well, to do so, I want us to sit with another word that I'm sure will make at least some of us here today uncomfortable: reparations. As I'm sure we all know, the idea of reparations is nothing new. Indeed, for African Americans, the promise of 40 acres and a mule made to freed enslaved Africans dating all the way back to 1865 has never been fully realized. Thus, Black people were legally freed after passage of the 13th Amendment, but they were not given any resources or support that would have truly granted them freedom. As a result, for centuries, Black communities, without being provided with the resources fully enjoyed by their white counterparts, have been subject to a number of inequities that have made true freedom, and all that word encompasses, evasive. But there's a shift happening in our country, sparked by the murder over a year and a half ago now of George Floyd by police in Minneapolis. That act and its aftermath have caused our country to take a cold, hard look at how generational divestment from Black communities has led to the severe inequities we see today. And as a result, we're finally seeing meaningful movement in addressing these inequities and repairing the harm. For example, after languishing in Congress for years, the U.S. House of Representatives Judiciary Committee has voted out of committee H.R. 40, which would establish a commission to study and develop reparations proposals for Black people. In Evanston, Illinois, we also saw that became the first city in the nation to pay reparations to its Black residents. And at the state level, there's also movement afoot. California has now become the first state in the nation to pass legislation that will create a statewide reparations task force, which is exactly what is needed here in New Jersey right now. Now, at first blush, many might wonder why there would be a call for reparations here in the Garden State, which is home to such immense wealth and prosperity. Well, recently the Institute released our report, Repairing the Cracks: How New Jersey Can Restore Black and Brown Communities Ravaged by COVID-19 and Systemic Racism. And this report is available on our website. In Repairing the Cracks, we highlight how, on one hand, COVID-19 has ravaged New Jersey's communities of color, which were already subject to a number of health inequities due to the pernicious impact of structural racism. For example, COVID-19 was the leading cause of death for Black New Jerseyans in 2020. In Newark, which is about half Black, over 850 people died from COVID-19 between March 2020 and March 2021, exceeding the death tolls of 5 states during the same period. And this disproportionate impact should come as no surprise, since Black people and other people of color have higher rates of underlying pre-existing conditions on which the virus preys, are more likely to have the frontline essential jobs that expose them to the virus, are less likely to get the critical health care they need, and face higher rates of unemployment, food insecurity, and mortgage delinquency than their white peers. And going deeper, COVID-19 has exposed the preformed cracks of structural racism in New Jersey's foundation, cracks that have erupted into earthquakes in its Black and Brown communities. Indeed, New Jersey is home to some of the worst racial disparities in the country on a number of fronts. Let me go through just a handful now. Number 1, 61% of incarcerated people denied the right to vote in our state are Black, even though Black people only make up about 13% of the population. Number 2, a Black adult in New Jersey is 12 times more likely to be locked up than a white adult, the highest racial disparity rate in the nation. Number 3, a Black youth in New Jersey is almost 18 times more likely to be locked up than a white youth, the highest racial disparity rate in the nation. Number 4, the ratio of Black to white infant mortality is over 3-to-1 in New Jersey, the highest disparity rate in the nation. Number 5, the Black to white likelihood of facing police force in New Jersey is 3-to-1. Number 6, New Jersey is the 6th most segregated state in the nation for Black students. And number 7, New Jersey has one of the starkest racial wealth gaps in the nation, where the median net wealth of a New Jersey white family is $352,000, the highest in the nation. By comparison, it's only $6,100 for New Jersey's Black families. And I want to take this moment to highlight 2 areas of disparity I just referenced: wealth and the youth justice system, which I believe will frame why we must look backward to understand how we got here today to begin to address these harms. First, to wealth, as I mentioned. New Jersey is home to one of the starkest racial wealth gaps in the nation. But to understand how we got to this egregious racial inequity today, we have to understand the intentional divestments of wealth in Black communities that have existed since the founding of the colony. To start, after the English took control of the colony in 1664, each English settling family received 150 acres of land, with an added 150 acres for each manservant they brought with them into the colony. Settlers coming to the colony in 1665 were also eligible to receive an additional 60 acres for every enslaved person they brought with them. As a result, by 1830, over 2/3 of all enslaved people in the North were held in New Jersey. After the end of slavery, this racially inequitable distribution of property continued through an early form of sharecropping called cottaging, which took place in Monmouth County, wherein free Black people lived on the property of former slaveholders and provided labor in exchange for shelter, food, and equipment. And this inequity continued into the 20th century through the widespread use of racially restrictive covenants throughout the state, which prevented Black homeownership. Even initiatives that have continuously been lauded as revolutionary for expanding homeownership opportunities were limited for Black residents. For example, returning Black servicemen were largely shut out of the promise of the GI Bill after World War II, which provided veterans with numerous resources to become homeowners and build wealth. For example, while approximately 25,000 Black New Jersey men served in World War II, less than 100 non-white veterans in New York and northern New Jersey received any of the 67,000 mortgages offered in the region. Redlining then became the law of the land, wherein an inability to secure lending options in Black communities deteriorated homeownership opportunities, leading to decreased property values, predatory lending practices, and an overemphasis on renting, and bringing us to today. Predatory lending practices that targeted Black communities led to mass default and mortgages from which they are still recovering. From 2015 to 2019, New Jersey had the highest foreclosure rate in the nation, and Atlantic City and Trenton, which have large Black populations, continue to lead the nation with the highest number of foreclosures in the country. As a result of the shameful history, today residents of New Jersey's Black epicenters are largely renters. Indeed, Newark, the state's largest city, has the second highest renter rate in the country, with 78% of its residents renting. I lay out this history of property divestment in New Jersey's Black communities because we cannot begin to tackle our state's stark racial wealth gap without accounting for the generational harm that has been done to separate Black people from homeownership and thus wealth accumulation. Which brings me to my next area of current inequity, youth justice. And for this one, I want to tell you a story, the story of the Bordentown School. Founded in 1886 by the formerly enslaved Reverend Walter Rice, the Bordentown School was a state-run boarding school in Bordentown, New Jersey, for the state's Black students. Called the Tuskegee of the North after Booker T. Washington's Tuskegee Institute, the school educated generations of New Jersey's Black youth to become leaders in law, medicine, education, and other skilled trades. Hailed as a national model, the school was visited by such luminaries as W.E.B. Du Bois, Albert Einstein, Eleanor Roosevelt, and Paul Robeson, just to name a few. After the end of school segregation and a failed attempt to integrate, the school closed in 1955. And what now sits on the land that was once home to the Tuskegee of the North? Hayes, New Jersey's girls' youth prison. And across the street sits JMSF, the state's most secure youth prison for boys. Bordentown has literally become the school-to-prison pipeline realized. Now, instead of being seen as number one in the nation for elite Black education, we're number one for a different reason. As I mentioned, New Jersey has the worst Black to white youth incarceration disparity rate in the entire nation, with the Black youth almost 18 times more likely to be locked up than their white counterpart. Now, instead of funneling state funds into an esteemed educational institution meant to uplift our Black youth, the state is spending almost $500,000 to incarcerate each of the 80 young people in our state's 3 youth prisons, which are over 75% empty. In youth prisons that don't increase public safety, with around a quarter of young people ending up right back within these facilities within 3 years of release. In youth prisons that remove kids from their schools, their families, and their communities. This is a broken system in need of repair, both through closing our broken youth prisons and meaningfully reinvesting into the Black communities that we have stripped these young people from. And with this overview of our state's racial wealth gap and its broken youth justice system, I wanted to highlight just 2 areas that we need to reckon with as a state to begin to repair the harm. But as I said, these are only 2 areas. New Jersey must also reckon with how a failure to meaningfully invest in its Black communities has led to shameful inequities not only in wealth and youth incarceration, but in access to democracy, education, health, policing, and numerous other areas. And that is why New Jersey must meaningfully have the reparations conversation now. Now, many people ask us at the Institute, why reparations? Why are you calling for a statewide reparations task force to uncover and repair this history? Why can't you just call it something else? How about a racial equity task force? What about a racial wealth gap task force? Why don't you just call it anything else to address the harm without calling it reparations and potentially, making people feel bad or defensive about a history that they took no part in? In short, reparations makes people uncomfortable. Well, I think Malcolm X put the issue in clear focus with the following quote, and I quote, "If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there." New Jersey must begin to heal the wound, not just provide a Band-Aid for it. And to do this, we must expose our state's history of slavery and its lasting legacy to repair the harm. And that's why we, the Institute, pushed through the uncomfortable and launched our campaign, Say the Word Reparations, with a broad coalition of partners to get New Jersey to speak specifically and explicitly about why we need reparations in the Garden State, starting with the creation of a statewide reparations task force. And we hope that you all will join us in this fight. To do so, you can visit our reparations website at njisj.org/saytheword to learn more about how to support the creation of a statewide reparations task force today that will require New Jersey to research and address, through reparative policies and structural changes, its shameful legacy of slavery and racial discrimination. Importantly, to make New Jersey take this critical step toward reparations, we need a broad coalition of advocates and supporters from all across New Jersey to say the word reparations. To do so, we need all of you watching today to perhaps become uncomfortable, to do what is right and just. As Dr. King showed us in his life and legacy, that is what is needed to bend the moral arc of the universe toward justice. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope everyone enjoys the remainder of the commemoration.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for such meaningful words, Andrea. It is my great pleasure to be here to present the MLK Human Dignity Award for 2022. This award honors an individual who reflects Dr. King's principles and ideas in philosophy and action. As a recipient of the award in 2021, it is my great pleasure to share the joy of this moment with this year's award honoree, Rabbi Sally Priesand. Rabbi Sally J. Priesand, America's first female rabbi, was ordained in June 1972 by Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in Cincinnati, Ohio. Although her goal of becoming a rabbi was supported by her parents, she faced skepticism from administrative officials, teachers, and her fellow classmates. But she didn't let that stop her from carving a place for herself and for all women within Jewish history. In 1981, when she became rabbi at Monmouth Reformed Temple in Tinton Falls, Sally found the pulpit and community that she had long sought. The congregation responded warmly to her leadership. She infused their worship services with more Hebrew and congregational singing and shared her deep commitments to the needs of the poor, the survival of Israel, and the cause of justice and peace, propelling the congregation to social action. She served as rabbi until her retirement in 2006, becoming Rabbi Emerita. Rabbi Priesand's commitment to all things Jewish, to the cause of justice and peace, to equal opportunity for women, to the needs of the hungry and the homeless, and to the survival of Israel is reflected in her many organizational affiliations. She is a member of the Women of Reformed Judaism, Jewish Women International, Hadassah, the National Council of Jewish Women, the National Organization for Women, and the National Breast Cancer Coalition. Locally, she is president of Interfaith Neighbors, an organization whose primary purpose is to provide rental assistance and support for services for the working poor. She is a former chair of the membership committee of the Center of Holocaust, Human Rights, and Genocide Education at Brookdale Community College, is an active supporter of the Jewish Heritage Museum of Monmouth County, and works closely with Planned Parenthood on both the local and national level. Rabbi Sally Priesand, we are inspired and humbled by your commitment and are very proud to present you with this year's Dr. Martin Luther King Human Dignity Award.
Thank you for such a warm and gracious introduction. I am honored to receive this award from the YMCA, especially since it comes as I celebrate the 50th anniversary of my ordination, and even more especially because it is being presented to me by Gwen Love, whom I have come to know and admire for the service she has given and continues to give to our community. This weekend, we join our fellow citizens in marking the birthday of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., even as we in the Jewish community, during the month of January, recall the yahrzeit, the anniversary of the death of one of our greatest teachers, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who, like Dr. King, was known for his eloquence, both in writing and in speaking, and whose faith found authenticity in action. Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel were friends, each regarding the other as a modern-day prophet, each believing that God calls us to be partners in completing the world, and each convinced that when humanity does not live up to its highest ideals, the only thing to do is to be more human and to show others how to be more human. Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel shared a special affinity for the Exodus motif in the Hebrew Bible, often referring to it in their speeches, calling it history's first conference on religion and race, with the main participants being Pharaoh and Moses. The story of Egyptian slavery and how Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, with God's help, freed the Israelites is a story that we Jews read from year to year at our Passover Seder. When Dr. King was assassinated, he was scheduled just a few days later to attend Rabbi Heschel's Seder and celebrate with him and with his family the message of freedom reflected in this ritual. But alas, that was not to be, and instead, Rabbi Heschel spoke at Dr. King's funeral. As it happens, we Jews are reading from the book of Exodus at this season of the year, and we discover in its words the many messages that Dr. King so eloquently expounded in his speeches. In fact, in many ways, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was our modern Moses, and in his life, we see reflected that ancient story of slavery and freedom, a story that cements the links binding together the African American community and the Jewish community, along with all those in every community who stand up for dignity and justice. Racism, said Rabbi Heschel, is man's gravest threat to man, the maximum of hatred for a minimum of reason. Permit me to share with you a story about Dr. King. I am proud to have been born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, the first major city in America to elect an African American as its mayor, Carl Stokes, in 1967. A few months before that, Dr. King came to Cleveland, and while there, he addressed the students of Glenville High School. Several years ago at that high school, inside a slim box of old reel-to-reel tape, hidden away in a pile of stuff about to be discarded, there was uncovered a recording of that speech. As to be expected, it was powerful, poetic, and inspiring. Dr. King encouraged the students to shun violence, seize opportunities, and always remember that the best way to overcome anything is to be the best that you can be. That speech became part of the curriculum in Cleveland high schools, and through the miracle of modern technology, we can listen to it online. Dr. King ended his remarks that day with these words: "If you can't fly, run. If you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But by all means, keep moving." Let us promise each other on this day when we remember Dr. King, his life and legacy, his partnership with Rabbi Heschel, and all that he meant to us and to our country. Let us promise each other that we will keep moving and always work together to create a just and compassionate society where all may share God's gifts in the joy of freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and special thanks to all of our guest speakers today for sharing your voices with us as we reflect on our commitment to continuing the legacy of Dr. King. Congratulations, Rabbi Priesand. We are so very inspired by you and all you do to put accountability into action. Also, congratulations to our essay winners. Your voices and perspectives are so needed in our changing world. Andrea, thank you for your inspiring words in your keynote today. Our world can no longer be a passive place where the status quo is enough. We must be willing to have uncomfortable conversations and truly understand that what unites us will always be stronger than what divides us. As I was preparing my remarks for this morning, I came across this quote from Alice Walker. "Look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming." Well, in my dreams, both present and future, the Y is a beacon for good and systemic change, and we are committed to leading the way to a brighter future by ensuring our doors are open to all. I've said before that the two most important words in the Y's mission statement are for all. Today we recognize that in order to be truly for all, we need to lead with equity. That means working to identify and remove the barriers that historically have prevented some of those in our communities from thriving, while ensuring that each individual can access the unique support they need. As an organization focused on strengthening the community and building common ground, we've been working to support equity and inclusion. And while we've made progress, we know we have more work to do. To that end, we have committed to a plan of action as a priority for our YMCA that we call JEDI, for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. We launched this internally over the last year as a thoughtful assessment and development phase for our staff and our stakeholders. We embrace difficult conversations in order to reduce barriers and improve our culture from within. We're training our teams, growing JEDI leaders, and engaging our greater community in this vital, transformative work. One of our first steps was to create an equity statement that everyone, staff and volunteers, could get behind and enthusiastically support. And I'm proud to share it with you today.
The YMCA of Greater Monmouth County is a multicultural, anti-racist, anti-oppressive organization open to all people.
We welcome and value individuals
of every age, race,
ethnicity, religion,
Perspective, gender identity,
gender expression, ability,
sexual orientation, and financial circumstance.
We are committed to programs and services
that advance diversity and inclusion,
reflecting the people and needs of our community.
Our commitment to justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion creates better individuals, a better community, and a better world. Because community is plural, not singular. Our plan also includes continuing to strengthen our community throughout the year through Togetherhood, our community service initiative that provides an opportunity every month with a different project to give back and lend a hand to those in need. We want to take just a few minutes to share with you a video that shows all the things we were able to accomplish with the help of so many of you to make an incredible impact over the past year.
In January of 2020, our Y was inspired to put Dr. King's mission of service to others into deeper action of our own. So we launched our Togetherhood team of staff and volunteers to stay true to our commitment to be a Y in the community for the community. With the pandemic, our Togetherhood plan evolved quickly to serve in urgent ways we never have before. Throughout 2021, we continued our food collection and distribution, nourishing at-risk communities and homebound individuals. We made space at our Ys for life-saving blood drives, COVID testing, and vaccinations. We reached members at home with virtual fitness to keep their health routines intact. We supported families safely with flexible childcare, with an added dose of social-emotional support through our caring counselors. And enthusiastic volunteers took part in reading to preschoolers as part of Dr. Seuss Week. As the mental health toll grew, we expanded our Ys counseling and social services role in schools and communities through partnerships in suicide prevention and traumatic loss support. We swept the beaches, prepped camp properties for summer fun, and touched base with our veterans to let them know we cared. We recognized real needs of our neighbors and partnered with local charities to deliver backpacks, school supplies, and holiday gifts to struggling families. At the Y, we see people of all ages and from every walk of life working side by side to strengthen lives. Togetherhood inspires us to ensure that everyone has the opportunity to reach their fullest potential with dignity.
Dr. King once said, "People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other." It's time to start communicating. We need to inspire each other instead of being afraid of each other. We need to recognize our differences and find ways to celebrate what brings us together. As we close our program today, I'd like to invite each of you to move accountability into action by continuing to participate in Togetherhood activities that lift our entire community. Let's get comfortable feeling uncomfortable by continuing the conversation that we've started in our essay contest and begin building relationships across perceived differences. Let's keep Dr. King's spirit alive all year and commit to serving together to truly bring our community together, because together never mattered more. And now I'd like to introduce our good friend and planning committee member for this year's event, Pastor Jessica Nolte from the United Methodist Church of Red Bank, who will share today's benediction.
Thank you, Lori. And now let us be blessed by this benediction. As we go into our day, may we go with conviction and hope, trusting that each one of our voices raised in the pursuit of justice matters. Add your voice, move your feet, extend your hands. Step out of your comfort zones and make an effort to engage with others, even those who don't look like you, believe like you, act like you, even those who don't see eye to eye with you. In the spirit of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., let us break down the walls that divide us and build bridges instead. May we be blessed with wisdom and peace as we pursue justice and hope and love for all. So, having been nourished by this gathering together, its words and witness, let us go and be peace. Amen. And now it is my pleasure to introduce the Red Bank Regional High School Student Choir's performance of Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as
That was beautiful. Thank you to the students of the Red Bank Regional High School Choir for sharing this beautiful song. And to all those who added their voice to this event, Reverend Ron Sparks, our essay winners, Tom Hayes, Samara O'Neill, Darrell Hughes, Andrea McChristian, Gwen Love, Rabbi Sally Priesand, Pastor Jessica Nolte, and Lori Goganzer. Thank you for making the 33rd annual MLK commemorative event one to remember. On behalf of the YMCA and our MLK Advisory Committee, thank you all for logging on and celebrating with us today. Thank you for sharing your morning with us, for taking time to reflect, for continuing the great legacy of Dr. King, and for your commitment to carry his mission forward in your action and in deed. To quote Dr. King again, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle. Let's continue to keep the struggle going in the spirit of Dr. King alive in our hearts, our words, and our actions. God bless everyone.